Hi, I'm David with EV World News. We talk about electric vehicles, green energy, and the stock market. It's Wednesday, and I'm happy to have our engineer Mike Herzog back in studio with us today. How's it going, Mike?
I'd love to say I'm glad to be here, but dreary, rainy Nebraska in October isn't quite the same as the Caribbean. So we need the rain, but I'm glad to be home. But it's just little different experience.
You know, it's Halloween tomorrow. Hopefully, I used to live in North Dakota, and we usually got the first snow at Halloween. So
All right.
thankfully we don't get that here. Usually, I'm not saying it couldn't happen, but what was it? It was 85 degrees yesterday. Probably not going to snow
I
the next
think
couple of days. But
100%.
you get this weirdness with the weather. So yesterday we had these massive winds blowing from the south, bringing us that warm air, and then all of a sudden in a couple of days it'll reverse and come from the north, and we'll get that really cold weather, which makes Nebraska less desirable to live in. But hey, I'm still going to stick with that Fortune rating us the #1 city to move to in the United States for
There
this
you
year.
go. We can hang our hat on
So
it.
yeah, it was really quite surprising. You would have thought it would have been like Nashville or something like that, which it probably was the previous couple of years, but who knows? Anyways, our first story today is Tesla is doubling the size of the Gigafactory in Austin, Texas. So it's funny, you see all these doubters talking about how Tesla is imploding and all these things, and it's like, the Tesla sales are down. And in actuality, their sales were down. They did an earnings report last week, and their sales were down. Profits were up massively.
Yeah.
And so, and I talked about this a little bit yesterday, but their average car cost to manufacture is $35,000. Now, when we think about it in the EV space, now this is across all the cars. This
That's
is
across all their brands.
the three, the Y, which is the 3 is their cheapest. The Y is next. Then you got the Model S, the X, and the Cybertruck. They're all kind of about the same price, reasonably. They're all very similarly priced. Although those last three probably don't make up even 20, they're somewhere between 10 and 20% of all of their sales.
Yeah.
The two cheaper ones are 80-85%. But still, when you think about the greater scheme of things, when you think about Lucid losing $200,000 to $300,000 per vehicle, Rivian losing something like $90,000 per vehicle they manufacture, yet they manufacture cars for only $35,000.
Yeah.
But Tesla's built 7 million cars. So that's pretty amazing that they've built 7 million. But anyways, they're going to double the size of the Gigafactory in Texas. It's already 5 million square feet. So they're going to go to 10 million square feet. Anyway.
We talk about it damn near every week. It's any blip on Tesla, any negative, any recall, anything like that. It's just everything gets blown up out of proportion. And part of that's a product of their figurehead and out there, and people wanted to poke at that as much as they can. But it's just they've been the leader for such a long time. People need something to talk about. How about that?
No, I get that. But so currently, the Gigafactory produces the Model Y, the Cybertruck, and the battery cells that power the Cybertruck. And they plan to build the Robotaxi and Cybercab also at this Gigafactory.
New facility, the new expanded one.
Yes, the automaker's also looking to build 2 new vehicles based on the Model 3 and Model Y, but those will be built on the same production lines for the Model Y at the factory. So they filed 10 applications with the Texas Department of Licensing and Registration to double the size of the Austin factory. The individual projects cited include body in white, which is just the car body, castings, paint, plastics, stamping, and drive unit. Provide hints about the expansion purposes. Body in white is a stage in which automobile manufacturing, where a car's body is put together before things such as the motor and seats are installed.
See, I was wondering if they were going to expand power cell production and battery production, because that's still an area with Tesla where it's don't sleep on it, because they are taking off in that space and doing great things. So I was wondering if that was going to be part of their expansion too, of like, well, let's got to make the batteries at the same time.
That's yeah, it's amazing some of the things that they are doing. And while we're on the subject of Tesla, I haven't had this article. Comes from Seeking Alpha, and that's a stock, you
Mhm.
know, guidance report. And their feeling is Tesla is set to have its iPhone moment. And what they mean by this is when Apple introduced the iPhone, it went from being a company that just really sold to people in the creative graphic arts kind of space for computing. Um, the iPhone kind of transcended that. Everybody kind of, I'm not saying everybody owns an iPhone, but iPhone became one of the dominant things in the phone space. And as that happened, it gave a lot of people their first introduction to using Apple products, and it made them a more significant player in laptops and desktops. And one of the things, I don't know what, you're an engineer, you probably know a thing or two about computers, but one of the things that was always significant, all Apple computing products come with a decent graphics card.
Mhm.
Okay. Whereas if you went to Office Depot or Best Buy and bought an off the shelf PC, they usually do not, because
It's not.
those components, that video card could add $300 to $1,000 to the cost of the computer by itself. And Apple's pretty much always put that in there, and you need that to do high-end graphic applications.
Which
Okay.
is the world today, right? I mean, that
Mhm.
is, it's not like the old IBM, like I need a business machine. This machine here is to crunch a spreadsheet and do some emails. Now I know a lot of industries. My wife's in marketing. I mean, they're Mac. I mean, they're Apple all the way just for that function. I mean,
Right.
it's better graphics.
Well, think about this. So if you were Bitcoin mining, it relies extensively on, for some reason, I've never really understood why, but on video card um, usage. The idea originally was to use your extra video card usage, but you couldn't do this with just a basic PC. People would have to go out and buy all of the high-end video cards. And so for a long time, it was tripling and quadrupling the price of the highest, so that like the $1,000 video cards were going for like $3,000 because there was demand for them.
Mhm.
And I haven't looked at video cards in a while. I assume that's calmed down some,
I would hope.
but yeah, I'm just saying that was one of the things that Apple always included, that ability to run high-end graphics and all of their things. Well, anyways, back to Tesla. They're saying price parity with ICE vehicles is expected to be reached by 2027, and the robo-taxis will provide low-cost per-mile transportation and generate revenue for owners. This will accelerate the transition to EVs. I know Musk is saying that the robo-taxi should be able to operate from, including depreciation, everything, 20 to 40 cents per mile. And so it's basically going to just be rolling around, picking people up and taking them to places. Now, the at full self-driving isn't, you know, it's not the end all be all. I mean, there's still some human reasoning and figuring things out, situations that the cameras can't just pick out to know what's going on. But there aren't a lot of those, but there are certainly some situations where it's not gonna
Well,
exactly
and
work right.
when you think about some of the applications for that, where if it's a fixed route, think of
Mhm.
a downtown hub to an airport or an airport to a hotel or things. I mean, with AI, they learn and they improve. No, now can it go down every little alley and be prepared for every garbage can and cone? And no, but if it has fixed routes, it has regular paths, it's just going to keep getting better and better and better and cleaner and more efficient in the approach it takes to it, which is great. I mean, I think those are the big uses off the bat.
Well, like you said, the pre-planned route. So I almost think of it as replacing buses.
Yeah.
So if you think about there's designated places where the bus stops. There's going to be designated places where robo-taxi is going to have to stop, and you're going to have to be at that location. Whereas, like, if you ordered a taxi or an Uber, they'll pick you right up. You could hail a taxi right on the side of the road, and they'll just stop and pick you up. You know,
Mhm.
who knows? They may be able to put that feature in there. To see somebody waving their arm, the car may be able to
Oh,
stop for
I'm
them.
sure it's coming there, but It's just I think people when they say, "Oh, it's autonomous driving," well, no, it's not. From day one out of the box, it's not going to be able to go up a dirt mountain road, that it's never seen before. It isn't It's just
Well,
start with the easy
you
road.
wonder.
Okay.
Well, and the thing is, they're collecting all this data from
Yep.
from the millions of Tesla drivers that are out there, and that robotaxi is not supposed to have a steering wheel.
Wow.
Yeah, they're
No
supposedly
manual.
going to be delivered with no manual way to operate them.
That's crazy.
It is. It's really hard to fathom. I suspect there's some way to override it, but I don't. I just can't imagine
Yeah.
what that's going to look like.
I don't know.
Knowing Tesla, you're going to use your phone app. You're just going to be turning your phone in your hand, and
It's like
and
Mario Kart. You just sit there with your little Nintendo controller, and you can do it.
yeah.
No, I think one of the biggest things working in Tesla's favor and all EVs right now is just word of mouth, people's experience, everything like that. Now that it's been years and years and years and years for Tesla, but other vehicle and brands out there that are coming along, it's talking to your neighbor, talking to somebody casual. Oh, you have an EV? How is it? It's fine. It's don't think about it anymore. It's worked great. Yeah, there's no maintenance. Yeah, I have to think about charging every couple of days, but otherwise it's fine. I think that's going to be the tipping point for a lot of people where it's not a novelty in conversation anymore. Like, oh, you own an EV? It's like, well, yeah, I have an EV. It's just what I drive. It's fine.
The one guy we had on here for from EV Auto out in Salt Lake City, he posted some picture. So if people request it, he'll bring their Cybertruck with their company graphics and all that to to children's birthday parties.
Oh, nice.
And he showed some video of one of his employees driving up the Cybertruck, and all the children were like screaming and cheering, and it was really quite funny how unique that was. But his truck with their graphics and wrap or whatever on it, it looks quite unique. But still, it was really funny to see all these little kids just cheering for the Cybertruck coming down the road.
My kids call them out when they see him.
Yeah.
Ooh, Cybertruck when they go through. And maybe should we start some like an old slug bug, like a cyber punch or something? Every time you see one, you gotta call it out and hit the guy next to you.
There really aren't that many of them around, but they are unique when you see them. Let me see. So let's go ahead and talk about this article about Omaha. So this was in the Washington Post, and basically it says a utility promised to stop burning coal. Then Google and Meta came to town. So I want to talk about this because this is in your space. And an energy crunch forces continued coal burning in a low-income area as data centers strain the regional power supply. So let me see. North Omaha, which is a more minority-dominated portion of Omaha.
Low income part of town, and yep.
And so there was a 1950s era coal burning power plant has been celebrated. It's going to finally stop burning coal. The community has some of the region's worst air pollutions and highest rates of asthma. The 2023 deadline to get rid of that plant for the coal arrived. The power company balked, and eliminating toxic emissions conflicted with a competing priority. Was it charging EVs? No, it's data centers. We're one of the cheapest states in the country for electricity. We're in Nebraska. It's 11, 12 cents a kilowatt hour, depending on where you're at. It's pretty damn cheap. Anyways, power hungry Meta and Google data centers, the utility helped recruit to the region. They recruited them before they could secure enough additional power. Now, the hope is eventually to switch over to renewables and stuff like that. We do have lots of renewables here. There's no shortage of wind and other projects going on here, but damn, they now have pushed the plan to burn coal at least through 2026, and they're even skeptical it'll actually stop then. So this has been.
There's a lot of things going on, and I think what's pertinent to this discussion, and I would say much bigger in the national landscape, is recognizing data and AI and Chat GPT and all of these things. They are what's driving this huge spike in demand. from the power system perspective, 15 years ago, we were looking at projections and going, well, crap, we're losing load. Things are getting more efficient. ACs are more efficient. LED lighting, all of these things, all of our existing load was going down. And there was nothing, yeah, there's growth, there's more people, there's more businesses, but nothing skyrocketing. Now pivot to 2024, and we're saying over the next 10 years, the grid's going to see more growth than it's ever seen, mainly, and it's driven by data centers. A couple of years ago, the conversation was EVs. Oh, what are we going to do about EVs? What are we going to do about EVs? EVs are manageable. It might be a little bumpy at part of it, but this data center growth is insane. We have here in Omaha, where we're at, we have a cluster of them, and to say they were recruited, absolutely, yeah. We wanted to add load. We had a lot of generation. We wanted to do it. There's a cluster of a couple of data centers that is more power intensive than the city of Lincoln, which is 300,000 people, the capital of Nebraska, just up the road, just in this couple square mile area. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. And you couple that generation, which because of all the renewables, it's just gotten so much more complicated. They can't figure out what to turn on, who's responsible for paying for the upgrades, everything like that. And there's just this giant backlog waiting to add new generation to the system. So where we have it in Nebraska, they've kept it on. They've kept the power plants on.
Well, and then right over beside them, what do you got? You got Amazon. Yeah. And how many EV charging? What do they have? 200 EV charging stations or something like that there? Those are level 2, mind you, but still, that's the equivalent of having 200 air conditioners running over there.
Yeah.
It's still a lot of juice running in that side.
It's true. It is nothing but power. I mean, it is just a huge power drive. Surprisingly, a lot of water too. Big water demand in those too with the electricity. So years and years ago in the Obama administration, when it came out and said, hey, we're gonna shut down all the coal-fired power plants and we're gonna do it within a couple of years. People in my industry, me personally, like, great. I think that's a great plan, with my hat on over here. But as somebody who helps plan and run the grid, it was like, no, you're not. The grid's going to collapse, if you start shutting these down. And that's true today as well. And that's why these things are lingering on longer than they'd like. They're starting 3 Mile Island back up.
Right.
You had issues just because it's been studied. We know it's there. It's base load. We know we can run it. And it's a pure grid stability thing. The grid would shut down. We would have issues if we didn't keep these things on.
What's funny is, as we do this show, we seem to be, we're obviously pro EV, okay, and we're pro clean energy, but we're also pro nuclear. We're sort of neutral to negative on hydrogen.
It's
I mean, I just
a question mark for me.
We try to find good news about hydrogen, but it's just really rare to find a good argument. And so we go through this, but it's interesting to see because we've come up with basically solutions for EV. Everything from the heat pump hot water heaters, replacing, swapping that out in your home that has an electric hot water heater with a heat pump hot water heater makes up for your EV charging, essentially. And so it's kind of a simple fix. It's not as demanding as people think, but man, AI and these data centers, it is really going to tax everything that you can put out there for renewables, things. It's interesting. Musk is so big on solar. He talks about it all the time. He's got this just giant energy source in the sky, and it never needs to be serviced. All this, and it's like, it's just there. You just got to take it. And it's interesting to hear, see those discussions. And, Oasis is saying, if you've ever been in a data center, it's nothing but miles and miles of copper, air conditioning, server switches, very power intensive. You're mentioning a thing with water. Do you know where the water for our data centers comes from? because that was one of the big things, because it's not just electricity. You do have to have access to water, because if it was just like, for instance, in Arizona, it would be a challenge
It
getting
would
the
be a
water for
challenge
one.
for them too. No, we had
Yeah.
not to get too into the weeds in Omaha, but we had some water issues where they were locating just because of the topography, like drains downhill towards the rivers. So they had to kind of re-engineer some of the water systems and the watershed lines out there to help with this water, which is great for development in the area. All of a sudden,
Yeah.
it opened up all this new land for housing and commercial and everything like that. But it's a
So
challenge.
I don't know that much about water infrastructure in the Omaha metro, but I am really familiar with sewer infrastructure. And the data centers are they in? They're mostly in Sarpy County, right?
Yep.
So they're in Sarpy County. They're not in Douglas County is where Omaha is. Sarpy County is the next county south. And in Sarpy County, you have this ridge line that is about midway through the county, and it's
That's the one.
north of the Platte River. And you can't really run sewer easily over that without spending $100 million. Okay. And so there's always been this issue of everything that is north of that ridge line basically will eventually get developed into housing, and the south side of the ridge line will always be farmland.
That's the
Most
line they
likely.
broke, or at least put a dent in with the data centers. Is that right?
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. So all the data centers are on the north side of the ridge line, though.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. So, anyways, and I realize for all you people who aren't
For
from the
everybody
Omaha
else,
area or really care at all about what's going on in Nebraska, we'll stop talking about that. But it's just fascinating that we've gone through this. So, Meta is looking for more data center megawatt capacity. And their big state, it looks like they're moving to, looks like Ohio. They need 244 megawatts in Ohio. They need 180 megawatts in Tennessee, 150 in Arizona. They got a few other states that they have varying needs. Well, okay, so Ohio needed 244 for Meta. Google wants Ohio to provide them with 762 megawatts.
Jeez. And it's one of the, just for reference for people if they're listening, that those numbers are insane. Those numbers are insane. Like a reference point is always like I always use Walmart. A full Walmart with grocery, refrigeration, heating, cooling, lighting, the Walmart mega center is about a megawatt. So they're asking, we want to build 762 Walmarts in this tiny, tiny little square of land. It's insane. It's insane.
So these are Google numbers. 2 Google data centers in Nebraska use the most energy. And this is what, 283 megawatts. they're pulling some power here in Nebraska. Anyways, but Ohio, they're under construction to add 762 megawatts. It's interesting. Iowa's not far behind us, 268, but this is just Google. This up here was for Facebook or Meta, and Nebraska's currently like number 7. We're at 180 for Meta.
Yeah.
Yeah. So obviously we're going to keep using the coal, and who knows? We keep talking about, will they reopen one of our nuclear power plants? It doesn't look like they will, but you never know. Watch one of these data centers. Google or Meta come and buy the power plant. That'll be the next step.
The nuclear, the one that shut down in Nebraska isn't there anymore. I mean, it is deconstructed.
It has.
Yeah, but where it gets really interesting is from like the transmission grid and the regional perspective, that area is already, studied and more or less approved. Like there used to be a power plant here. Well, what if you came and replaced it with anything, solar, wind?
You could do solar, hydroelectric. Can
Yep.
you do hydro on the Missouri? Is there a challenge to that?
Yeah, you need a dam. I mean, most of Missouri is like, when you get up into the Dakotas, like there's tons of hydroelectric in those spaces. All the dams produce a lot of power, but to do something meaningful, you'd really need to study the hydrology and water flow on the river.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, we'll move off of that. Let's talk about Lucid. So next week, Lucid is going to make it available to purchase the Lucid Gravity SUV, and it has 100+ more miles of range than their competitors. So their Grand Touring version starts at $94,900 or $95,000, has a 440-mile range. That's
Ooh,
impressive range
awesome.
on
Yeah.
an SUV. And there's going to be an $80,000 version that will come late in 2025. And they're about to start production. So they currently just have the Lucid Air, which is a sedan that runs from about $80,000 to $250,000, depending on the version you get of it. And it's not cheap, but it was priced to compete with the highest end Mercedes, lower end maybe Rolls Royce,
Yeah, yeah.
things
It's
along
luxury.
those.
It's
Yeah,
luxury, luxury.
real luxury in that market. They've suffered from not having great sales because they're in a market where there's a lot of people in that luxury space. Their benefit is that they're predominantly owned by the Saudi sovereign
Mhm.
fund. So the Saudi royal family essentially owns about 2/3 of Lucid. And they're not going to let anything happen to it. I always tell people all the time, it's kind of a safe bet in the stock market because 10 years from now, it's still going to be there, and it's probably going to be worth a whole lot more money because they're going to start building these overseas too. But I'll show pictures here in a minute. Um, but let's see what I've got here. But it's pretty cool that it's got that extra range. Let me get to this. I don't want my computer to blow up while
See all the
I'm
ads.
trying. Well, that's one of the problems. Let me see here about sharing
Oh, I mean,
screen.
with range like that, just referencing where we're at in the country and in that space, I mean that's 8 hours of driving. I mean, that's 8 or 9, which is reasonable for you to want to take a break and okay, yeah, I can charge for half an hour when I'm done or 45 minutes. I'm going to want to take a break anyway. That's solid range for sure.
Yeah, when you start talking about 400+ miles of range, I think you're getting into some overkill.
You think so?
Yeah, I mean, it's once again, it goes back to the argument, how far are you going to drive without stopping to go to the bathroom or to eat or something like that anyways. And I mean, it's nice looking, no
Mhm.
question. I mean,
Oh, I'm
that's a
sure it's
sharp looking.
comfortable and fun to drive.
Yeah, it's got a good look there. Yeah, just obviously, I think there's a lot going for
Did
Lucid.
it have a third row? Did it have a third row in there?
Oh,
Like
you know what?
looks like it.
Let's
That
see if they give us that kind of shot.
couldn't
Well,
quite tell.
it sort of froze up.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay.
Um, I didn't see it mentioned about having a third row. You would think it would.
Just
Um,
if you're gonna any SUV anymore, I mean that's almost required. I bet it is. I bet it is.
yeah, I would imagine that it would be, but oh yeah, it is three
Okay.
row SUV. Yeah. We got a close look and even sat in the front. um, Lucid has secured a fresh $1 billion in funding, confirmed the SUV will have an NACS port, which is the Tesla charging standard, and rolled its first pre-production models off its assembly lines this past summer. Let's see. I saw this one opinion said, I rented a Lucid Air Grand Touring this past weekend. I was not impressed. It felt very much like a 2015 Tesla P85D. The software was not intuitive and the screens were not great. The only positive thing I could say about it versus something like a Model S is it has a decent amount of range and is pretty efficient. I could never justify a new Air Grand Touring for a Model S plaid price. That's talking, let's just say around 100 grand.
Mhm.
I'd much rather prefer Rivian and Tesla software. I'm avoiding Teslas now thanks to Elon. I own two Rivians and a Model 3. I've owned a Model Y, a Model S, and a Chevy Bolt. Oh, that always gets interesting. They said there may be a high performance Sapphire version of the Gravity, which the Sapphire of the Air is the
That's the
$250,000
real
version.
fancy one.
Yeah, so I'm sure that will be nice and pricey. Um, yeah, I thought I'd share that because that's good news. But apparently, you can start ordering the Gravity next week,
Cool.
but you're going to be waiting a year to
You're gonna
get
be
it.
waiting. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, well, how long do people wait on the Cybertruck? Wasn't it like about 3-4 years? You know, I
Years.
mean, yeah, to get those. So it's interesting kind of to see where that has peaked. I keep seeing these things like, oh, Tesla has sold off all of its early orders, and now
Mhm.
they're overproducing. And yet then I look and you see this like, oh, the Cybertruck is the third best selling EV in the United States. So
Crazy.
currently Tesla holds the top three positions with the Y, the
I,
3,
and now the
and the
Cybertruck.
Cybertruck is number 3.
I thought
Um,
they were still filling Cybertruck orders. I didn't think they'd
they
gone.
are, they
Okay.
are, but I've seen some things saying that they've started to get them to stack up in lots somewhere and all that, and I think that's a tough argument. I feel obligated to mention some Canoo news. Canoo is kind of a pet project for Bill. It's one of these companies. I don't recommend trading their stock. Okay. Um, they've got
Okay,
a.
let me ask you this before you, what are their sales at? I mean, are they even
That's the problem. I'm going to
commercially
get it.
selling vehicles?
They're sort of taking orders. They've given a few vehicles to NASA. There's been a couple of things, but these have all really been prototypes.
Oh, and
You know,
that's everything
and
I hear about Canoo. It always comes back to like, are you actually making vehicles yet for
this was the
sale?
complaint about them last year was that the CEO spent twice as much money on private jets as the company did in revenue. Okay. That to me is not a real good look.
Mm-mm.
Okay. He could have flown commercial. Okay. It just is not a good look. Okay. So there's a couple of companies that I'm always hopeful. Canoo's one of them, Mullen's one of them, and it's just like stop screwing over your shareholders. Okay, it just is a bad look. Okay, so I'm just saying that. So I'm not trying to really praise Canoo here. If anything, there's a couple of these companies. I'm really hoping that eventually somebody with more sense comes in and acquires these companies. Canoo is a bargain. I think the stock trades for less than $1. And same with Mullen.
Mhm.
They're really both probably bargain companies for somebody who could use the tech. Whether you had somebody like Volkswagen or Ford or somebody like that come in, I wouldn't be surprised. In fact, I think GM may own part of Canoo. I mean, I think they may have been an early stage investor, but um, yeah, it's tough to see. But I mean, it's a cool looking van. But the big news was Canoo got approval to sell in the United Kingdom. They received individual vehicle approval regulatory certificates to sell commercial delivery vans in the United Kingdom. The company called it a significant milestone as it prepares for pilot testing the RHD versions of its LDV 130 and LDV 190 electric commercial delivery vans with a prestigious fleet in the United Kingdom.
Mm.
And 100, oh, let me see. They achieved certificates for 130 vehicles in just 3 months with less than 2% changes to the bill of materials. Oh no, that it's not 130 vehicles. That was the LDV 130. Okay, my
Oh,
bad.
that's the model number.
I was like getting excited. Maybe they actually sold something. Um, This approval not only highlights Canoo's dedication to quality and compliance, but also positions the company to contribute to the UK's goals for reducing carbon emissions and promoting cleaner air. Yeah, more fluff. Um, you know, it they're making nice looking vehicles. They're serving a niche in the commercial space that looks good. They're trying to do the right things. Yet I'm not convinced the company's well run. It'd be different if they were telling. So like Mullen had some news that they sold hundreds of vehicles to an outfit in the United Arab Emirates.
Great.
Okay, and they got a cash advance for it. Okay, so they're absolutely going to be able to produce and deliver those vehicles. Okay, that's good news. You know, this maybe is a precursor. Maybe they can't announce something until this. That's what I hope. I hope for their sake they're about to announce that.
Otherwise, it's like you got approval to sell. Do you have any sales lined up?
You know,
we got approval to sell.
That would be good. I don't know if you watched the episode. Bill and I interviewed Marco Soriano from Soriano Motori from Italy. It was really interesting because he actually was in a palace beside the Colosseum in Rome doing the interview with us. Okay, it doesn't really come out in the interview, but you know, it's just this guy. When you think of a fancy gentleman's gentleman, this was him.
This was the guy.
Yeah, he's big in he's been big in the banking industry. He helped with like the Chrysler Stellantis or something like that. He's helped with some of these big the Chrysler Fiat merger years ago. He helped with that. Anyways, they're building electric motorcycles. He's got a 20-year contract with McLaren USA to deliver 1,000 bikes per year. His bikes are going to retail for about $100,000 a piece.
Wow.
Okay, these are expensive electric motorcycles. He calls them bespoke. They have sound, and they actually have a 4-speed transmission.
Really?
Yeah, so you actually shift gears on these.
You actually shift gears. That's interesting.
Yeah, so it has a motorcycle experience, a traditional motorcycle experience, and they look really nice. Okay, but they should for that kind of price, right?
Beautiful motorcycle.
But he has the financial wherewithal to produce the 1,000 bikes a year. Okay, that's not a question. They're already set. They've been producing. They started producing motorcycles in 1903. Okay, they stopped producing motorcycles around the late 60s, and he revived it about 4 years ago. Okay. But they've made so much money from auto and motorcycle manufacturing. They used to be big in the racing world and real estate that they had no trouble self-funding. In fact, Marco owns 92% of the company. So he hasn't sold off very much, and he can get the money he needs for manufacturing. And then I look at all these other folks, and they're like, we're going to sell these vans for like $40,000, and we might get some sales and all this. And it's like, you know, I look at all these things. I look at Marco, and I'm like, he's got $1 billion contract with McLaren. Okay. And then I compare this, and I look at all these struggling companies. And the big thing that comes down to, can you execute? Can you get the money to execute? And some of these folks, I feel they got the money to execute, and then they go and they spend too much money on fluff. And I'm not real sure about that. Anyways, that's my piece. I'm not trying to bash Canoo. That it wasn't my intent, but you know, people are always curious what's going on with. That was the first piece of news I've really had in a while on them.
I haven't heard anything about them in a hot minute.
No. Anyways, next we're going to talk about Ford and LG, which is a Korean company, have announced they're going to shift EV battery production for the Mach-E from Poland to Michigan in 2025. They want to take advantage of incentives provided by the Inflation Reduction Act, and the move allows Ford to maximize available tax credits as the IRA grants significant advantages to companies manufacturing EV components domestically. This change aligns Ford with the IRA's goal of boosting U.S.-based manufacturing for sustainable energy technologies. You know, I had another article that somebody sent me from Bloomberg, and they were talking about what they expect if Kamala is elected for EVs versus Trump. And all this stuff was like, Trump could do this, Trump could do that. And it was like, Trump could try to seal off the EV leasing loophole. Okay, so this, and I could see him doing that, because that one's a little goofy, because the leasing loophole lets you get around all of the U.S. manufacturing
production,
rules, right?
Cycle tracing, and all of that.
Yeah, so I can see that piece coming about. And one of the other things was the um, there's this price cap. There's this $80,000 price cap on the vehicle to qualify, and by doing the lease, you avoided that as well, because there is a $7,500 EV tax credit if you lease like one of these commercial vans we were just showing. You know, so there, but the 7,500 goes to the leasing company, and they, you know, generally
then they can turn
pass
around
it
and
back to
figure
you
out how to get that back
in the lease. Yeah. So, anyways, but I think this is a good sign. We like. I'm always enthused seeing manufacturing coming to the United States. Doesn't matter what it is. You know, you could be making any kind of widgets. In this case, it just happens to be in our space, which is electric vehicles, and
that's a big deal. I mean, it's supply chain control. It's domestic supply chain. I mean, that's all good.
Yeah, and anyways, a nice looking Mach-E. I like the look of the Mach-E. It's funny when you pull up behind one on the road, it really does look like a Mustang from behind. I still think it's goofy though to try to give it. I like the Mach-E name. I think that's fine. I don't think they needed to call it the Mustang Mach-E, but when you pull up behind it though, it still does look like a Mustang car.
That back end's a little bit higher on it.
Yeah, but the lights are the same, and it has that distinctive look. But it's still, to people who are, you know, Ford Mustang enthusiasts, a lot of them feel it was kind of a sellout. You know, and I get that. I get that. I think they could have done it.
It does not, from the profile, it does not look like a muscle car. How about
No,
that? It looks like
to me, this is the electric version of the Ford Explorer. You know, and just a different kind of look. But anyways, let's move on, and let's talk about, you know, I was telling you, so International Harvester used to have this vehicle called the Scout, and I did talk about this a little bit yesterday, but we were talking earlier about SUV bloat and things like that. But this is what the Scout looks like. So Volkswagen owns the rights to the Scout. Let's see if this lights up right. Oh, I clicked to do something. It doesn't mean it's going to do anything. There we go. Oh, hold on. There we go. All right. Let's see what we got here. See how this works out, this slideshow. God, I'm going to start cussing. There we go. That looks nice. That's a good look. So one of the things people are talking about is how much Volkswagen Scout vehicles, they're doing a pickup, starting with a pickup truck and an SUV, how much they look like the Rivians, how much they're similar to the Rivian R1S and the R1T, but it's a Volkswagen brand. And Volkswagen has already told their dealers this is going to be sold in the Tesla Rivian Lucid model, where it's direct to consumer.
Direct to consumer. That's
and dealers are feeling a bit betrayed.
I would have said that was a Rivian. I mean, whereas like here they are side by side. That looks just like a Rivian.
Mm-hmm. Oh, let's see. I'm getting some competing ads here. 2024 Nissan Frontier starting at 30,500. I have a hard time. Well, the Frontier is a smaller pickup truck, but oh god, I'm getting frustrated by the
I'd turn it off. It's cool.
The slideshow.
Good for Volkswagen for trying something different, and what that looks like from a direct to consumer model. And I don't know, be curious to see when you have a large organization like that, what oomph they can put behind it and kind of go around.
Yeah, you know, you look at that there, you know, if it didn't say Scout on the front and I told you that was a Ford Bronco, would you believe me?
I would buy that as well. Like, okay.
If I told you it was a Rivian R1S or the new R2, you'd probably believe that as well, right? Yep. It really looks the same. Or if I even told you it was some new Range Rover, it would probably seem. I mean, all those vehicles have a very similar look and feel. Now, these are Rivians in this picture.
Okay, I was
Okay,
gonna say
yeah,
like
just so you know, those are Rivians.
I
Rivians
don't
have
know, man.
distinctive
That looks
headlights.
like
Yeah, it doesn't say the Rivians, but those are definitely Rivians. You can tell from the headlights.
yeah.
Okay, but oh, here it says the Rivian still has advantages. We don't have full specs for the Scouts, but the Rivian R1T and R1S have shorter wheelbases, likely allowing for a better breakover angle, which is important when clearing obstacles off-road. Rivian is also includes a built-in air compressor for inflating tires, and the R1T and R1S should be able to tow a little bit more too. Well, let's just see. But
I
I'm
mean,
expecting
honestly,
this.
how many people are taking those vehicles off road?
I don't know.
I don't think it's very many.
Yeah, they're expecting the Scout should have 350 miles of electric range. Um, most people drive vehicles just to go back and forth to work. It's very interesting look at these. But if you look at this picture here, let me see where I can get that. I mean, that Scout truck over there, that sure looks like an R1T. I mean, it's very simple. But like I said, they look like trucks, right?
Yeah.
Essentially, that's one thing. You do the Tesla Cybertruck just looks different, right? It has a truck function. To be fair, there was some Chevy trucks that occasionally had that different look. That where you could almost open up the rear window or whatever. I can't remember what they're called, but there's been some different looks Chevy's tried over the years, different things. But
These look like, I mean, that style you're referring to, it's cleaner lines. I mean, everything seemed to have gone curvy, and especially in the EV world, it's curves were big, but now it's, here's sharp,
boxy.
here's boxy. Yep, here's a right angle, here's something like that. And it does have kind of that older feel, like an old Bronco. It's very, very boxy.
Yeah, well, it's just it's got a nice look. I think there's a lot of room in the space. You look at it, for years we've had all these different companies making full-size pickup trucks. You got even Toyota and Nissan in that space, along with Ram, Ford, and Chevy. And and then Chevy even has, you have the GM trucks and you have the Chevy trucks, and none of them hurt for sales.
No,
They all have brand loyalty, tremendous sales, tremendous profit margins for those companies. Those full-size trucks are probably what make most of those companies come along. Okay, so in the car space, per car sold, Ferrari makes the most money per vehicle sold.
Okay.
Yeah, so they're considered to be a production company, even if they are sort of handmade, whatever. But of a true mass market car, do you know who makes the most money per car?
I was an F-150, something like that. Ford.
It's Tesla.
Tesla.
Tesla is by far the most profitable company per car, and they're double number two. Number two is Volkswagen, or number three. It depends on if you're factoring in Ferrari. Okay. Yeah, and Ferrari's tough because Ferrari makes something like 100,000 plus profit per car. Yeah, it's nuts. But Volkswagen's number two. Now the thing is, we know Volkswagen has the financial wherewithal to make the Scout brand work. Okay, this is one of the tricky things. I don't think Rivian's going to go anywhere. I mean, I'm sorry, I don't mean it in a negative way. I get
it's sticking around.
It's Rivian. Not going. It's not going away. Yeah, Rivian's going to stick. You've got Amazon's the biggest owner. Volkswagen is now, I think, the second biggest owner. The Saudis are like the third or fourth biggest owner.
Yeah.
And even Ford owns part of Rivian, but it's a very small part. They were a big initial investor. But I think it's like a percent or two of the company. But they still, Ford owns something there. I always thought maybe they'd be a good company for Ford to acquire. Because you look at it, what do you have? Ford used to have Mercury. Does Mercury even exist anymore? I haven't seen a Mercury in a long time. You've got Lincoln. Lincoln still sells a lot of cars, and you've got Ford. Whereas when you go to GM, you got all kinds of stuff. You go to Stellantis, you got all kinds of brands. But anyways, but Rivian, I don't know if this is going to really cut into Rivian. You're going to have people who are pure enthusiasts. But what's interesting is Volkswagen and Rivian have this software deal they're doing together.
Mm-hmm.
And so that software is going to go both into the Rivians and it's go into these new Scouts. It'll be interesting to see how that works. But I think there's plenty of there seems to be plenty of space for consumer demand. You get all these issues like, well, Tesla's got the best tech, but I don't like Elon. So I can go buy a Rivian, which is considered to have almost as good a tech. It's supposed to be real close. And so, if we're looking at the technology in the cars, Rivian's probably the number 2 EV for tech, but the number 3 might be BYD. Okay, so you might have to look at the Chinese before you go like over to Lucid or somebody like that. But I'm just saying Volkswagen's going to be a competitor there. And Volkswagen's been, they've done well for themselves ever since
the ID4. I mean, their flagship brand. Like that, it's a nice vehicle. It's doing well.
Yeah, it is. It does all right. Anyways, folks, so I want to thank y'all for listening to us ramble about different EV topics. And Mike gives us a younger perspective, whereas when Bill and I are on, it's like old guys talking cars. And Bill and I really ramble. Anyways, but good show today, folks. Thanks for watching. And Mike will be back with me next week. I'll be back tomorrow with Bill.
Take care.